Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Now, last time I talked about why A Christmas Carol, Dickens' novella, is still relevant and why I think everyone should read it. But now I want to talk about my favorite adaptations of the story because each one that I've seen and liked has its own strengths and also its own weaknesses. So rather than rank them, I'm just going to lay out what the strengths and what the weaknesses are. That way, whatever draws you to the story, you can pick an adaptation that is right for you. There have been so many of them, and a lot of them have been good. There have been complaints every once in a while, are we making too many adaptations of A Christmas Carol? Maybe it's time to let the story go. And yet, somehow, new ones keep being made. I heard on another video, actually, on this same subject, that Robert Eggers of Nosferatu, The Lighthouse, and The Witch fame is making a version that will star Willem Dafoe as Scrooge. You just sold me on your version, Mr. Eggers. I am gonna see this now. But going in chronological order, so I'm going to take you all the way back to 1938. MGM's version starring Reginald Owen. Now, Reginald Owen is not a household name. He's a character actor who did a lot of good work in the 1930s. One of MGM's roster in the late 30s and early 40s of British character actors. And he was not originally supposed to play the role of Scrooge. Originally, it was to have been Lionel Barrymore, but Barrymore had a stroke that immobilized him. He continued to work, even despite his compromised mobility, but they replaced him in the role of Scrooge with Reginald Owen for this particular production. And I'll always wonder what might have been, but Owen is actually, that's one of the strengths. I like his portrayal. I've very rarely seen a performance that got the character wrong. And he does a good job. There's also a strong supporting cast. Gene Lockhart, whom some of you may remember as the beleaguered judge from Miracle on 34th Street. He's Bob Cratchit here, and he does a good job. His wife in the movie is played by his real-life wife. Leo G. Carroll plays the ghost of Jacob Marley. Terry Kilburn, a child actor who never really hit it as big as Freddie Bartholomew or Mickey Rooney, but he shows up every once in a while in films of this time. He plays Tiny Tim, and I like his version of Tim because he seems at times a lot more like an actual real boy than like a symbol of the poor man's child. The first time we see him when he's watching Scrooge's nephew Fred do the slide on the sidewalk, and he has this wonderfully boyish excitement. You broke the record, that's what you've done. And that kind of wins me over. So this has a good supporting cast as well. And it also has a musical score by Franz Waxman. This was 3 years after his iconic score for The Bride of Frankenstein back in 1935. But this one doesn't quite measure up to some of the others for a very simple flaw: brevity. This version runs an hour and 9 minutes, I believe, which means it has to cut out a lot. And I wonder why. It seems like they were rushing this through production. It wasn't given the same time and attention and energy that MGM had previously given David Copperfield in 1935 or A Tale of Two Cities in 1936. If they had treated this story with as much care and attention, it would have been hard to beat. But instead, you get the abbreviated version of a novella that already isn't all that long. Now, there are certain things that they cut out that I understand why they cut out in view of the fact that this was made in 38 and the Great Depression had maybe lifted a little bit, but it was still going on. It was still going on, so maybe that particular audience wasn't ready to get a look at the emaciated children, ignorance, and want. Maybe they weren't up for that. So a lot of the darker aspects of the story were left unexplored, and I understand why. But what I really have a beef with is the fact that they cut out Belle. That is Scrooge's love interest. I know she's called Alice in the Alistair Sim film, but they cut out that plot line altogether. We don't see Scrooge as a young man, we see Scrooge as a boy. And then the Ghost of Christmas Past sequence is cut off right there before she can show him himself as a young man, himself in love, and then losing that love, which is such an important part of his character development on the whole. And I think the lack of that is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't think of Reginald Owen when they think of Ebenezer Scrooge, because he didn't really have the opportunity to get to play the role to his up to his best ability because the development was truncated. So that I do regret. There's a lot to like here, and if you are in a hurry, you don't have a lot of time to spend watching an hour and a half plus adaptation, this is a good one. So give it a watch if you're interested. It does have a lot of things going for it, particularly if you are like me and you love 1930s cinema. So, skipping ahead to the 1950s, 1951 to be precise. And then we have Scrooge, or as it's called, it was released as Scrooge in the UK and as A Christmas Carol here in the US. But this is the version with Alistair Sim playing Scrooge. So, right away, one of the strengths, and this is going to sound like a broken record, but one of the strengths is, of course, Alistair Sim's portrayal of Scrooge. There's a good reason why he is mentioned again and again as a top tier Scrooge, the best, the greatest of all time. And his film does give you a lot of insight into the character. So he is able to plumb a lot more psychological depths than Reginald Owen's able to. So he had the advantage of a better script. So the script is also one of the strengths, that this one takes its time with some of the development and as a result has a longer runtime. But it never feels slow. It has probably the best Ghost of Christmas Past sequence of any of them, because the screenwriters elaborated. They took what Dickens gave us, they took the raw material that Dickens gave us, and they expanded on it. So, a good majority of the movie is, in fact, in the Christmas Past sequence, because that seems to be where the screenwriter and the director have located what makes Scrooge so interesting. And it really does a good job of showing you how he got to be the way that he is, and we actually see him succumb to corruption and to the pursuit of wealth at all costs. So we actually see him join forces with Jacob Marley. We actually see him stab his old boss Fezziwig in the back, and we actually see Fan, Fred's mother, his nephew's mother. We see her die. And in that deathbed scene, the Ghost of Christmas Past shows him the deathbed scene, but then makes him watch even after his younger self has left the room. And so he hears, as an old man watching, what he didn't hear when he was a young man because he left the room too soon. Bitter, angry, hurt, mourning. And what she has to say on her deathbed is, "Promise me you will look after my little boy." So he learns just how badly he has let his sister down. It's a very powerful moment. So, the Ghost of Christmas Past sequence, that whole thing, definitely one of the big strengths of this movie. You do have some nice supporting performances from Mervyn Johns as Bob Cratchit and Michael Horton. He's probably the best of the supporting performances. At least he leaves the biggest impact on me as the ghost of Jacob Marley. Now, in terms of weaknesses, it's weird how a strength can become a weakness when we're dealing with a movie that has only a limited runtime. This is approximately an hour and a half. Because we see so much of Christmas Past, we don't see nearly as much of Christmas Present as I wish we did. Christmas Present gets a little bit truncated because of all the time and energy and attention that gets expended on Christmas Past. So that's a bit of a disappointment because I've always found the Christmas Present sequences to be particularly powerful. And I don't really care for seeing them get short shrift here. So that would be the main weakness that I feel the 1951 version has. That in highlighting one particular segment of the story, it reduces the impact somewhat of the later segments of the story. Plus, I don't like the idea that they rewrote Scrooge's love interest. In the novella, we see her as a young matron with a house full of children and a loving husband. And that's the future that she has gained after she leaves Ebenezer due to his changed nature. Here, she's a spinster. Why? Why did they make that change? Why did they show her having lost almost as much as Scrooge himself when she actually made a wise decision? Is she punished for this? Or are we meant to see her as a kind of Virgin Mary, as a nun-like figure, relieving suffering humanity while not really having a home and husband and family of her own? I haven't quite made up my mind about that, but it isn't the future that Dickens saw for this character. And I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to have to split this up into two videos. I apologize for this, but I'll check back in with you in just a few minutes to talk a little bit about 1970, 1984, and 1992. See you then.